Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics. First, the highlights. Inauguration of members of the 10th State Houses of Assembly kick off today. Newly elected governors across the country hit the ground running within a week of their inauguration. Plus, Enugu residents defy state government's directives on Monday's sit-at-home order. Welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. To our top stories today, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal sitting in Abuja resumed its hearing in the case of the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, versus INEC, Bola Tinubu Shatima, and the All Progressives Congress, APC. The first and third respondents, that is INEC and the APC, are physically represented in court, while the APC is represented by the Director, Legal Services. INEC is represented by the National Commissioner. And when the case came up on Friday, the PDP presented 3 additional witnesses who were cross-examined by counsel to the respondents before the matter was adjourned till today. Hearing for today continued with witness presentation, the petitioner announcing that he has 4 more witnesses to call, saying he had already called 6 witnesses in previous sitting. The first witness for the day was Dr. Abiy Sekebo from Rivers State, a medical doctor and businessman. The witness is said to have presented to the tribunal a letter of appointment by the PDP to serve as the River State Coalition Officer for the party, which was adopted by the court as counsels raised no objection to it. Under cross-examination, the petitioner's counsel called for results from River State as declared by INEC. The document was presented to the witness to identify it if it was the same results declared by INEC on the day of the election, to which he answered in affirmative. Now, under further examination by counsels to the respondent, the witness told the court that he voted during the presidential election in River State and waited for about 10 minutes before leaving the polling unit, but came back to the unit during the counting. He says the result sheet was filled and signed by the PDP party agent in the unit. He also said he visited other polling units, about 20 of them, and that the polling units did not upload their results. He also asserted the same thing happened in other units of the state. We'll bring you more from the tribunal court as we get them. And in River State, the governor, Siminalayi Fubara, has inaugurated the state's 10th assembly, setting the tone for the election of new principal officers. Governor Fubara made the proclamation after dissolving the 9th assembly during a ceremony at the State Assembly Complex, Moscow Road in Port Harcourt. In a brief speech, the governor hinged the power to proclaim the new assembly on Section 105, subsection 3 of the Constitution. The River State House of Assembly is made up of 32 members from 32 state constituencies across 23 local government areas. All 32 of them are members of the People's Democratic Party. The single-party assembly is expected to elect its principal officers at a special session just after the proclamation.
What is this? What is this? This way, this way, this way. Go this way. Leave. Go this way, this way. Leave this way.
And the federal government has announced that it will consider a list of demands from the Trade Union Congress, which includes a minimum wage and a look at the practicability of the demands. A spokesperson for the federal government, Mr. Dele Alake, told State House correspondents after the meeting, which lasted for about 3 hours on Sunday, that most fundamentally, the president will constitute a tripartite committee to include state and organised labour and the private sector to study the dynamics of the minimum wage augmentation to reach an amicable conclusion. He further explains that there is no disagreement with the NLC over their demand for a review of the minimum wage or return to status quo, noting that the federal government representatives will meet with the president to crystallise decisions on the demands. Meanwhile, the TUC maintains that the federal government, in the interest of social dialogue, should revert the price of fuel while discussions continue. President of the TUC, Festus Osifo, said the union is hopeful as the federal government promises to look into their demands.
Now, we are very happy to announce to Nigerians that this engagement has been very productive. The TUC that attended today's meeting presented a list of demands, and those demands we have studied and we are going to present to Mr. President for his consideration. But those demands, we can announce to Nigerians that a lot of the items on the list are not impracticable. What we need to do is to study the numbers very well, and then we have asked the TUC to also give us the leeway to consult, very exhaustively and come back on Tuesday, reconvene on Tuesday to actually look at the numbers, the viability, practicability of all the items that have been presented to us. Now, most important, top priority on the list, which the government is also looking at very seriously, and the president has announced before, is the issue of the minimum wage, which the labor movement has demanded as a consequence of these removal of the consequential impact of the removal of subsidy. So government is looking at that, and Mr. President is most likely going to constitute a tripartite committee. That is the committee of federal government and including the states, then the organized labor on the other part, and the private sector. Now, this is a tripartite arrangement. It will be a committee that will study all the dynamics of a wage increase, the percentages, the numbers, and the categories that will be affected. So by Tuesday, when we come back to reconvene and meet with the TUC again, the labor movement, we should have very concrete items to present to the world. But the most important thing for today is that we are making appreciable progress with the labor.
Yes, we have presented the list of our demands to them, and they received it in good faith, that they will go back to their principal and come back to us on Tuesday. So we are hopeful that the demand that we have presented would, it will be reviewed in the best interest of Nigerian workers and the entire Nigerian masses. It's because they are going back to Mr. President. So we also think that we should give them that benefit of doubt, so that we will convey this meeting again on Tuesday. So we've, and topmost in our demand was clearly stated as well, that for utmost good faith and in the interest of social dialogue, that they should revert back the pump price while discussion continues.
Well, for more on the fuel subsidy debate, joining us virtually is the CEO, Economic Associate, Dr. Ayo Teriba. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Let's begin with your position on fuel subsidy. Should it go or should it stay?
Well, I think the nation has moved beyond the point of decision. If I will quote the president in his inaugural speech, the subsidy is gone. So we cannot be asking the question about should it go or should it stay. Parties are on the table because it is gone. So they are trying to find common grounds to move forward in the aftermath of subsidy removal. So basically, that's where we are.
Perhaps not for all, because we understand, members of the Labour are still saying that it should revert back to status quo until they agree at a decision. The Labour unions are not happy with the removal, so far as we know. The TUC has also listed some demands, however, including the increase in workers' salaries. I think there are several other issues, the minimum wage and tax breaks for workers. Do you think this presents a solution to the problem?
Well, the TUC is not disagreeing with the removal of subsidy. The TUC is merely saying, given the removal of the first subsidy, meet the following demands, which I presume they are not coming up with for the first time. They have been on the negotiating table with the immediate past administration. Deadlines have been fixed and agreed between the two of them for when refineries will be revamped, for when transport services will be provided. So to say they don't agree with subsidy removal will be very, very far from the truth. So all the negotiations, all the meetings had been in anticipation of removal of subsidy. Their own issue is relief and removal. Which one should come first? They had, been of the mind that their demands will be met before the subsidy will be removed. And now that the subsidy has been removed, okay, then meet our demands. And they're saying, do this. If you do it, there'll be no strike. If you don't do it, if you don't do some revised, the same government should review their demands. Of course, they are the negotiating table. They will be open to compromises. So basically, let Nigeria get closer to the same page with government and labor. Subsidy has taken the exit. The question of how much should you do and when should you do them to mitigate the negative consequences of that subsidy removal on Nigerians, especially vulnerable groups, including labor.
And that perhaps also is the question, because the critics of the fuel subsidy removal are saying that it will weaken the purchasing power of Nigerians and, the population support will be further impoverished. And looking at our population, and a number of people are seeing the effects in price commodities and tenancy, school fees. A lot of things are being hiked up.
Well, there is never a coin with only one side. There are always two sides to the coin. It is not true that subsidy removal only has negative consequences, that it has no positive consequence. Of course, it has advantages. It has advantages. It has a positive economic impact on the country. That's why it's going to be done in the first place. Because it's become a waste on government resources. It's become a drain pipe, on government revenue that could be used to do, things that are materially better for Nigerians. And it's inefficient. The fact that you sell petroleum products way below what should be market prices means that people waste them. You have people who enjoy the subsidized fuel who put 10 cars on the road at one time, carrying one person, is moving in a convoy of 10, 12, 15 cars. Because petrol is cheap. It is free. At market prices, convoy prices will reduce. So these are possible. Since they put the new prices in place, have you noticed the reduced traffic on the road? Have you noticed improved traveling time? These are positive things. And if truly we get into the era of a deregulated, petroleum regime, there's going to be supply response that is going to be efficiency enhancing. I mean, when we started telephone, when we liberalized telephone approach, who could afford to buy a handset? Who could afford airtime? But when the supply response, became sufficiently pronounced, who couldn't afford a handset? Who couldn't afford airtime now? Even airtime comes for free. So Nigerians should not be transfixed on the immediate hardship that is going to be involved when, in the aftermath of the removal of the subsidy. Nigerians should also wake up, to the medium-term, benefits of improved domestic supply of refined products.
We're approaching our break for this hour, but just to quickly get your thoughts, do you see the NLC springing a surprise, seeing as they were not at the meeting yesterday, and the next meeting of the federal government and the TUC is tomorrow?
Well, as I said before, the NLC and the TUC haven't just started meeting with government last week. They've been meeting with government for more than 2 years on this subsidy issue. And I would imagine that their positions are largely aligned. I'm not going to expect that the demands of NLC is going to be materially different from the demands of the TUC. So if NLC was not at the meeting, but their demands had been reflected and are met, why should they spring any surprise? It's not in their interest to spring surprises. It's in their interest that the interest of their workers be protected, and we should balance short-term, costs with medium-term gains.
All right.
That at the end of the day will be to the benefit of Nigerians and to the benefit of the Nigerian economy.
CEO, Economic Associates, Dr. Ayo Turiba, it's always a pleasure having you join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now to security. Enugu residents have defied the state government's directive asking them to go about their lawful business on a Monday, issued by the new administration of Dr. Peter Mba, contrary to the sit-at-home order issued by members of the indigenous people of Biafra IPOB. Our correspondent who monitored roads, some banks, markets, reports that roads earlier were completely deserted. Let's find out why. The police PRO in Enugu State, Dr. Daniel Ndukwe Akia, joins me virtually to talk more about this. Welcome to Lunchtime Politics. What were your observations monitoring compliance today around Enugu metropolis?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I will tell you, compliance is maximally picking up, but as expected, you would expect people to exercise a little reluctance. They wouldn't want to just jump onto the whole idea and begin to go about their lawful businesses as expected. But as we speak, momentum is building. In fact, I've just received pictures and videos of market locations where people have started their normal day activity in those locations. So compliance is gathering momentum as expected. Like I mentioned, it may not happen overnight. You wouldn't expect it to be as maximum as everybody would have expected it, because over time, this is what the people are getting used to gradually. But believe me, it is picking up, and I know very well that by the next time this day will come, people, the compliance will be extremely appreciated. So it is picking up. It's getting up to the level of what we expected it.
And perhaps to get to that level, do you think that the confidence, the encouragement that people need is a new face, I'm talking about the new administration, or police, security, people feeling confident to come out and because they have a secure environment?
I seriously believe that is already happening. I very much believe, because as you speak, it is not just about the police. It's a joint operation. We have the military, we have every other security agency involved in this exercise. Early this morning and even up to some moments ago, within the entire metropolis and the entire city, people would have seen the aircraft of the Nigerian Air Force covering the entire airspace within Enugu State, all in the bid to ensure that people are motivated and down on the land here, the police, the military, some are designated in strategic positions, while others are vigorously patrolling, visibly ensuring that people will see and know that, look, this is something we are taking very seriously. And I must tell you, the confidence is building up. And it's not something that started today. In fact, it's a build up to this day. We know today is the D-Day, but for now, we started the whole idea of stability policing, moving around, building the confidence of the good people of Enugu State. The idea is very simple, that they begin to feel a little bit more confident in what we are doing. This idea is not just an idea that His Excellency has come up with. It's an idea we strongly believe is for our good people, because this is what we do on a daily basis. The people in this part of the country want to go out there before most of them can get to cater for their daily needs. And that's why we're not going to allow the situation in this time, especially when we now have a governor that by himself has decided to add more impetus to what the previous administration had done earlier. He wants this to be more practical, to say, please go out in doing this. He has also encouraged the security forces to ensure that we all do what is expected of us. And in the end, people begin to go about their lawful businesses on a day like this.
Are you worried about activities, sit-at-home activities, that is, in neighboring states? And is there a plan, a sort of synergy between the command in Enugu and other neighboring states in the east?
Of course, there's always, Enugu, as you should know, within the southeast is bordered by just about almost all the states within the south, is except Imo. Imo State that is not directly having a clear direct border with it. But virtually every other state with the south, Ebonyi, Anambra, Abia State, all have boundaries with Enugu State. And there is no way whatsoever we can achieve this and have the kind of result we all expect if we feel it's something we can do of ourselves. Over time, we've been engaging, ensuring that that synergy is formed, not just within the police-to-police engagement of command. Synergy has also gone beyond military to military, military to police, and other agencies that are relevant in this country. All of them need to ensure, including government to government, all of them need to ensure that we have the maximum situation where everybody will feel very confident to come out and go about their lawful business. We exchange intelligence, share ideas, strategize together to know where the neighboring command can be of assistance. They come in and play that role. Where we cannot be of assistance to them, we also do that. The whole idea is to ensure that Enugu particularly and the entire southeast of on a day like this, people feel so free to go about engaging in the thing they are known for. We're largely known for business, we are known for industry. You can talk about the administrative duties, a civil servant and corporate society, but large the people of this part of the country are people who must go out on a daily basis before they can meet their daily needs and means of livelihood and sustain. So we build that synergy, we build the cooperation we need from our sister command to ensure that we get the kind of result. That is what we do on a daily basis.
All right, Police PRO Enugu State, Mr. Daniel Ndukwe, thank you for talking to us and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's go on to other stories. So it's been a week since Inauguration Day, and a number of new governors have been detailing their activities in their states. Well, for some, it's looking at the books and strategizing. For others, they've been hitting the ground running. Let's begin with the few in Katsina State, where Governor Diko Rada over the weekend paid an unscheduled visit to the Katsina Teaching Hospital to have a first-hand appraisal of the situation of patients. During the visit, he was said to have gone around different wards of the hospital, stopping at intervals to have unhindered interactions with patients. In Kaduna State, the man at the helm, Governor Obasani, in continuation of his strategic engagement with development partners, he had a meeting with the ambassador of the Royal Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to Nigeria. He was accompanied to the meeting by the former governor, Malam Nasser El-Rufai. He also tweeted that discussions at the meeting centered on establishing a solid Saudi Arabian presence in Kaduna State, attracting investors, forging a partnership with Saudi Arabian government to address developmental challenges in the state. And over to Cross River, where Governor Basio too embarked on inspection of the sale of petroleum products across Calabar metropolis. He said this was a swift response to the outcry of Cross Riverians over the increase in pump prices across the state. He embarked on an inspection of the sales of petroleum products across the metropolis and also inaugurated a joint task force on the sales. Well, let's head to Kaduna, where the governor of Niger State, Mohammed Bago, inspected the Niger State Lodge, Anguan Rimi, where he also visited the 5th Chocopolo, reiterating his administration's determination to invest in education, youth and tourism towards a sustainable Niger. And in Rivers, the governor, Siminalayi Fubara, over the weekend toured the state secretariat as part of his determination to improve service delivery. According to him, it was a reassuring visit, which excited the civil servants as he hopes to improve the system for better efficiency. Meanwhile, for the governor of Plateau State, Caleb Mutfwang, his convoy encountered a rally by the Nigerian Union of Teachers protesting on paid salaries. He reassured them that paying salaries is not an achievement but a duty. Also, during a visit by Honorable Aminu Sani Jaji, who's vying for speakership of the 10th National Assembly, the lawmaker expressed his condolences to the Plateau people and government due to the recent attacks that have resulted in several people being displaced. Well, the weekend was filled with a lot of activities for the Kano State Governor, Abba Yusuf Kabir. He paid an assessment visit to the Hasia Bayero Pediatric Hospital, where he said was once a haven for medical care to children and women for over 30 years, but was closed down by the previous administration. He promised to work towards renovating and reopening it for public use. Also, with the deputy governor, he paid another visit to the Kano State Pilgrims Camp to see the progress made in the provision of boreholes and land recovery. There was also another on-the-spot assessment visit to the Murtala Mohammed Specialist Hospital, which he said is a very important institution for provision of health care to the general public in Kano. Well, you've been served lunch this hour. Stay with Channels Television as we bring you all-round coverage of news and events around the globe. I'm Ms. Walker. Thank you for watching.